Hey everyone, welcome to Cooking with Teams. I am Dan, and this is a new show that I'm going to be producing along with my Tech Thursday, which this happens to be one of, and Tip Tuesday channels on YouTube. I'll have to decide if I'm creating another YouTube channel or repurposing one or both of my current YouTube channels, but this is the first official broadcast of Cooking with Teams. And you can use Cooking with Teams hashtag on any of the social media platforms to grab my attention if you have something you would like to discuss. Today, I was looking at some of the technical details of the Teams files that I have on my computer. And if I look here in my run dialog box, I have a user called Demo7. And the Demo7 account is not somebody I'm logged in as right now, but I can go ahead and change the permissions so I can get into the Demo7 folder. And then Microsoft Teams installs itself in a particular location under your C drive and your users folder. It's under app data. It's a hidden folder, so you have to get to your user folder and then just type \app data to get into that folder. And then there's a local folder below that. And below the local folder, here I'll zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see, hopefully. I can go down the list to Microsoft and then down the list again to all the way down to Teams. And within the Teams folder, if I hit the T, while I'm looking at the files here, or sorry, I need to go to current directory, and then hit the T. There's my Teams executable, and this one is from January 2021. So it's a pretty old version of Teams, and you can see from its install, it's much smaller than many of the other copies of Teams that I have on my computer. So if I right-click on the file, Teams.exe, and Properties, under the Details tab, I can get to some of the information about this being a file version 1.3 and the build number for that version of Teams that was installed way back in January under a demo account of some sort. Now, if I look at the other copies of Teams that I have, I can see the dates that those executables were installed on. I installed Teams under one of my accounts today. And so the build number today under the details is 1.4.19572. If I open Microsoft Teams on my workstation, this is one of the things that Teams can do, is make sure that it's updated and using the latest version of a client release. So I log into Teams. Maybe I come over here and I try to get my version information from Teams, but you'll see that it already tells me that if I want to keep using Teams, I need to download the latest update. And that's because I'm outdated on this account. I'm logged in as DESA. So if I go to the DESA folder and we do our little trick with the \app data, come on, users, DESA. And then we do app data. Why is it not finding that? Users, DESA, app data. There we go. Local folder. Go down and find Microsoft in the list. And then in Microsoft, we find Teams, current, and then we find the Teams executable. We can see that this is the version back from April 11th. of this year, and it's a 1.4.00.8872 version. Well, if I go ahead and upload or download the latest version of Teams, what will happen on my computer is I will get the latest version of the Teams application downloaded, and then I can go ahead and install it. So let's bring up a window here. And we will go ahead and navigate to our downloads folder, our Teams client that we just downloaded. We'll double click on that. And we'll let the latest version of Teams install itself on my computer. Now that I have the latest version of Teams, it should be telling me that it's all hunky-dory and downloaded. Let's see if the download failed or the install failed. I'm going to make sure Teams is closed by coming down here and quitting the application in my notification tray in the lower right. So make sure I don't have a Teams icon there. And then from the same place we went to install the latest version of Teams, I'm going to double click on that and see if it actually installs the update, which it looks like it is doing now. So probably what happened was Teams was still running in the background as opposed to not running. And it still looks like I'm getting that message. Let's see what's going on here with Teams on my computer. And this is why we're going to call it Cooking with Teams, because we're going to be learning all sorts of things about Teams and administration in this course. So I go ahead and uninstall Teams. Or don't uninstall, I stop Teams from running. I've got the right executable downloaded here. I don't have Teams running. I'm going to pop over to Control Panel and see if Teams tells me that it's installed on my computer. It does, and it tells me that it's from April and an older version. So I'm going to uninstall it from here. I do have some of these other users installed or running right now. So it's telling me, hey, are you sure you want to uninstall this with other users? That might be what's causing the problem. Is I may have the Teams executable open from different accounts because I'm logged in as, I think, one or two of those other accounts. I'm logged in as Directions, which I use for Directions training, and an account that I just set up today. So that could be me causing myself some pain with the install of this computer. Let's double check here. We go to the downloads folder, we pull the executable that I just downloaded again. So it's the same size and date. And we'll let that install and see if that, there it goes. It says installing Microsoft Teams. So it was either the fact that Teams and the client was still running, or the fact that I didn't uninstall a older version and I needed to do so to get updated. And the version that I had running of Teams was over 4 months old at this point on this workstation. So here as Teams starts up, because I'm using a personal account, I'm using one of my Hotmail accounts, I have the ability to log into that personal account. I have access to Microsoft as a guest. I have access to a DevUp tenant. I've put myself in as a guest to my business as well. So I could choose any of those to log into. Let's log into the personal one and just double check that Teams is up and happy and functional. And it looks like everything is happy and updated at this point within the Teams client. And if I go to the 3 dots, the about and the version, that's where I can see that I'm running 1.4.19 00.19572, 64-bit, and it was updated today. So I can see all that information if I'm troubleshooting somebody's computer from the three dots in the upper right of the Teams client, go down to About, and then go to the version of the Teams client. So the types of things that I will be talking about with cooking with Teams are some of the technical details of Teams like we just saw today. Whether that be how to figure out where the Teams client is installed, which is under your profile and a hidden folder called App Data, whether that is troubleshooting problems with the Teams client or other types of things that support folks might be discovering in Teams, or whether that's abilities to switch between different tenants within Teams. So I mentioned I'm using my personal account here, and I'm making the switch over to my business tenant, which I've invited my personal account to as a guest. So as I make that switch to Teams, I now get another window now with the guest information installed. And let's see if I've got any other Teams installed here that I have access to remotely as Ray_Daniel. It doesn't look like I have myself put into any of the teams within that environment. So we can make a switch over to Microsoft and see if over on their guest access, I have any teams there available to me. Same thing here. We validate who we are. And it's going to verify my identity. Let's use a verification. And I believe I've got this authenticator installed. Let's double check here. I do. Let's see if it comes up in there. For my personal account, it doesn't look like I've got it set up there. So Microsoft is requesting additional information. Let's see if this one works. If it's set up. Doesn't look like that one is set up on my account. So let's restart the Teams client and see what happens here. Maybe we'll use the email choice there. I have to log into Teams here. And then ask if I want to use that account everywhere. I'm just going to use it for Teams for now. Coming back into Teams to my personal account, we're going to switch over to the Microsoft guest. We bring up the authentication. Microsoft requires additional sign-in. Let's see if I can do a different type of authentication here. And while I'm doing this, let's talk about other things that are coming up for Microsoft Teams soon. There are events coming up for Microsoft Teams that you might want to be aware of, one of which I have signed up to speak at. Let me type in my security code here. Make sure that lets me in. It looks like it did. We'll share our screen again. One of the events that's coming up, Teams related, is over in Denver this fall. And so if you are in that area, you might be interested in vNext conference. If I'm recalling the name correctly, Comms vNext conference. And this conference is looking for speakers. So you'll notice a call for speakers at the top. It's October 25th and 26th in Denver, Colorado. Something to keep in mind. Now that I'm logged into Teams and my Microsoft tenant, I can see that I have access to the Microsoft Teams Community Leaders team, as well as the MS Midwest Toastmasters Club team that exist on Microsoft's tenant. So it's very easy for me to switch between these teams. It's very easy for me to hide particular channels that maybe I don't have as much interest in or feedback for. And then hidden channels, once they've been hidden, can be hovered over to display them. One thing that I discovered, we'll see if it's fixed in this build, is if I change my zoom level, either with the keyboard shortcut, which is Control plus and minus, or under the three dots, zoom in and out, it has been fixed. This is awesome because it's been one of those things I've been trying to troubleshoot, and I thought it might be me, but when I was zooming before, I wouldn't have the ability to show hidden channels. And so things like that may be temporary in Microsoft Teams and get addressed pretty darn quick. So that is awesome because I do a lot of zooming when I'm training, or just in the fact that I'm using a much bigger monitor. So this is very easy for me to read and maybe easy for you to read, but it's not necessary based on the size of the monitor that I'm using because it's a 28-inch monitor in front of me. So that is one of the things that Teams has addressed. Hidden channels are great because they shorten these lists of channels that you have in front of you. And then you can also drag and drop the Teams list and even take, if success stories is very important to me as a channel, I can pin that so the channels that are most important to me are right at the top of Teams. And just like we looked at dragging and dropping the teams within the list, I can also drag and drop pinned teams to change the order of them. So we'll share on Cooking with Teams some of these tips that I have discovered in Teams. Some things I would consider discoverable because if you look at the interface, for instance, the search at the top in the title bar, and other things I would consider not discoverable until you either find them yourself or somebody shares the tip with you. So we'll go through different things like that here on Cooking with Teams. And now that I have been live for a little while, let's take a look at what we've got going on from a standpoint of questions and feedback. Jeremy asked if Teams automatically updates. Jeremy, it does, unless you're 4.5 months out of date. I'm using an account that had a client that was 4.5 months outdated. And it looks like something with that older version. And then the fact that I'm logged in 2 or 3 times to my local computer was why it did not update automatically. So great question. Teams does automatically update. It keeps itself kind of Karen fed But they've also put in fairly recently a check to make sure you're not outdated from a client perspective. So you're not talking with a lesser version than what they would like to make sure is communicating to the Teams service, which is cloud-based in Microsoft 365. So great point. It does update itself unless you're like me and you have an account that you haven't used in months. And because I have multiple computer accounts on my local computer, that's why Teams wasn't updated for me specifically. So I wanted to share that with everybody so everybody knows why I was getting that behavior there. Well, we are finishing up our first episode of Cooking with Teams on Tech Thursday. Tech Thursday is something that I do typically every Thursday. And the idea is every Thursday we go live and I share some technical details of either something I've discovered or something that I'm using. And this week, we've been talking about some of the tech details behind Microsoft Teams. Thanks so much for joining me. My son is a culinary arts graduate. My wife loves the cooking channel, so we're going to do the cooking hats with cooking for Teams, and I will see about using those in the future. I appreciate you joining me. If you'd like to see this again, join me next Thursday for Tech Thursday and hopefully another episode of Cooking with Teams, if not sooner. Take care, everyone.